Donald Trump posting this on his social media platform, that he has ordered US forces to, quote, shoot and kill any boat that is laying mines in the strait. He also writes that US minesweepers are clearing mines from those waterways right now, according to him, at a tripled up level. And the US Defense Department announcing its forces have seized another vessel in the Indian Ocean that it says was carrying oil from Iran. I want to bring in CNN military analyst Colonel Cedric Leighton and Sina Azodi, who is the director of the Middle East Studies program at George Washington University. Good to have you both on board today. Colonel, a lot of fast-moving developments right now, certainly militarily speaking. Let's start there. How does the Navy demine the strait? And does Donald Trump's order, to your mind, mark an escalation in hostilities?
Well, Becky, I think it could be interpreted as an escalation, but it's actually kind of normal procedures because the Strait of Hormuz should not, under international law, be mined. So if there is mining going on, as the Iranians have said, then the mines need to be swept up. How do they do it? Normally, in the past, they would have used minesweepers. Unfortunately, those minesweepers have been decommissioned. They were based in Bahrain, and they were supposed to be used for events just like this. But being decommissioned, that makes it a bit more difficult. They can use what are known as LSTs and other ships to do minesweeping duties. It's a little bit more cumbersome. But according to some of the officials in the Pentagon, what they're talking about is taking about 6 months to actually remove the mines from the Strait of Hormuz. And that assumes that there are not going to be other mines that are going to be added to the mix out there.
So I just wonder, that does beg the question, what the US can actually achieve in the short term then.
Yeah, and that's a real problem. In the short term, it might be really difficult to open the Strait of Hormuz just from a technical perspective. But clearly the effort has to be made in order to do this, to keep the backlog really down and hopefully eliminate it at some point. But it definitely will take some time to do this.
Sina, let me bring you in. How do you believe Iran will read Donald Trump's new threat?
Well, I think Iranians have a very difficult time reading President Trump because every few hours, every few days, he changes his tone, he changes his attitude. One day he says that the ceasefire will not be extended, and the next day the president decides that he will indefinitely extend the ceasefire. I think for the president, this strategy works, but it is extremely hard for Iranians to decipher what the next move of the president is. Now, I think that with the current tit for tat operations to seize tankers, I think both sides they're trying to test the limits and show that they're not backing down. But in terms of minesweeping, I think Iranians have achieved what they wanted to achieve, and that was to create risk to the global shipping. As the colonel correctly pointed out, for the next 6 months, it's going to cause trouble, which means that global markets, oil tankers that will cross the Strait of Hormuz from the Persian Gulf will have difficulty. All you have to do is to one tanker is struck, and then you're going to have problems there.
Colonel Leighton, the US says it's boarded another vessel in the Indian Ocean. That after Iran seized 2 ships Wednesday. Sina said, this is what feels like sort of tit for tat action, but it's really serious stuff. Is this type of action at sea our new normal? And what are the risks here?
Yeah, it's not really normal to do this at sea, unless there's a hot pursuit or where there's piracy involved, like let's say off the coast of Somalia or something like that, or the vessel is under sanction. Now, you could make the argument in the Iranian case that vessels going to and from Iran are potentially under sanctions, but it is a bit abnormal to go outside of the region, outside of the Persian Gulf region, in order to conduct basically what amount to hot pursuit actions. So that is an escalation of sorts from the U.S. They've, of course, done that by sinking the Iranian naval vessel off the coast of Sri Lanka early in this war. So that was an indication of an attempt at escalation. And I think what we're seeing is basically an attempt to go after all Iranian vessels or all vessels that are destined for Iran, and that is part of their enforcement, the U.S. Navy's enforcement mechanism. But it is unusual and could potentially pose some legal problems as well.
I note your use of the term piracy there. This Gulf region where I am would argue what Iran is up to at present, or does argue that what Iran is up to at present is piracy, holding the region and the world economy hostage. And to that point, Sina, Iran says it has collected its first revenue from the Strait of Hormuz tolls, and it uses that term in its announcement. At this point, is there still a pathway for diplomatic negotiations? Or do you see a period now of more of this sort of brinkmanship at sea?
I think that we are in a contest or a battle of wills, meaning that, as I pointed out, I think both sides are trying to bring more bargaining chips to the table. The Iranian position is that as long as the U.S. blockade continues, they will not enter negotiations. Domestically, there are different factions in Iran who are pushing for different directions. One faction mistakenly thinks that because they didn't lose the war in the first round of fight, they can continue to fight, which I think is a great mistake for Iranians. The other faction thinks that they have to take the win from their perspective and once for all achieve a political settlement. But this issue of the double blockade that the U.S. has imposed has made things very difficult for those in Tehran who are pushing for a ceasefire.
Just give me your take on what you expect in the next 48 to 72 hours. Colonel, first, briefly.
So what I would say, Becky, is that in the next 48 or so hours, what you're going to look at is an escalation of what we're seeing right now, more ship seizures potentially, the possibility of the Iranians taking some more tankers if they can get them. Same thing for the U.S. And I don't see an immediate off-ramp, but at some point it will be necessary for both sides to come to the table one way or the other. But I don't think we've achieved that point yet.
Sina.
I absolutely agree with what the colonel said. I think that for the next few days, both sides will try to survive and do not say avoid saying uncle. And then because both sides want to think or to appear that they enter the negotiation table with more leverage. But I also think that both the Iranian side and the American side have a vested interest in reaching a political solution. I think that President Trump has realized that the war wasn't that easy as he was sold. I think he wants to bring an end to the conflict because of the impact on U.S. economy. Airfares have gone up, the price of gas has gone up, and we are in an election season. We are already seeing the signs of the Democrats gaining more seats or Democrat candidates being more elected more. And the Iranian side also has vested interest. They need sanctions relief. They need to rebuild their economy. They cannot continue to fight for a prolonged period. So both sides, for different reasons, of course, have a vested interest in ending the conflict.
Thank you both. And just a note for our viewers, as Sina was talking there, I'm listening and looking at that map, and I think it's just worth keeping that tracking map of Hormuz up just for a moment. When I consider where we are here in Abu Dhabi, just below the sort of Strait of Hormuz, down to the left-hand side there, and you look at the amount of shipping there in the Persian Gulf and in the Sea of Oman, it seems remarkable to me that, 8 weeks ago, that was a functioning sort of waterway. So much of the world economy depends on those little red and green dots there, which are all laid up waiting on what happens next. It really is, a moment in time, this. Thank you both very much indeed